Joining us now is General Tom McInerney. Now, let me tell you about the general. This is not your average general out there, okay? He has been U.S. Air Force for 32 years. It is good to have him with us, General Tom McInerney. Great to have you here in the John Fredericks Radio Network, sir.
Glad to be with you, John. Thanks for having me.
General, you've made some statements, and you said, look, I've been doing this for 32 years. And you said you're not comfortable that Joe Biden is capable of being commander-in-chief. In fact, even former Secretary of Defense Rob Gates said Biden has been wrong on policy for 40 years. Can you elaborate on this?
Yes, and let me give you a specific example. And if we have time, we can briefly discuss the debate last night. But the fact is, Vice President Biden was the vice president when we took down Osama bin Laden on 1 May 2011. The fact is that 3 months later, in in August, 6 August 2011, Extortion 17, which was a CH-47 helicopter, was shot down in Afghanistan, and specifically in the Tangi Valley. The issue was we lost 15 Navy SEALs out of the 35 that were on board that helicopter. Now, having 35 people on board that helicopter, I have problems with, and I'll define why. But those 15 Navy SEALs were part of SEAL Team 6. Now, 3 months before, they had taken down Osama bin Laden. And why we used a SEAL team in that manner, normally they are stealthy, they go in, and they were as part of a quick reaction force after a high-value target by the name of Kari Tahir. And they had a Ranger company in there ahead of them. And they were not able to get Tahir then, and so they sent in this quick reaction team. In any case, I won't belabor the tactics on it, but in any case, Vice President Biden is the one who released in May 2011, that it was SEAL Team 6 that made the attack on bin Laden and killed bin Laden. We have never done this before. And the reason you don't with these covert operations and these special forces, like SEAL Team 6, you don't want to expose their name. And it was a violation of our security procedures that we use. He was supported by Panetta, who was then the CIA director and led the real mission to go get bin Laden, and was one of the driving forces behind it. But they should never have, in the Obama administration, released the names of SEAL Team 6, not the names, but the organization designation.
Why did he do it?
I think he was bragging. He was spiking the football in the vernacular, and they were trying to look like they were doing great work. In fact, they were exposing our forces. Now, the big question is, John, did anybody know that SEAL Team 6 was on that helicopter? I don't want to go into that, but I will say putting 35 people on a CH-47, and by the way, it only had a 17-minute flight.
Right.
And so it meant the airplane was still full of fuel, full of all those troops,
right,
and it was in a difficult situation. Now, that would not have mattered. That's not what I think was the driving force, because it got hit by an RPG. 2 RPGs were fired. the bad thing was they didn't have any pre-strike attacks in there, although they had an AC-130 airborne and had helicopters, armed helicopters, because of their rules of engagement. Look, I spent a year in my first tour in Vietnam out of 4, once a week, planning a division-size heliborne assault. I was the air liaison officer, forward air controller in the Camau area, the southernmost tip of Vietnam. And so I'm intimately familiar with heliborne operations, and that was in its infancy. But you must pre-strike when you're coming in like that. But even that, I can criticize their tactics. You don't normally use Navy SEALs on quick reaction forces. They normally plan a great deal in advance. They go in at night, it's stealthy, just like they did to take Osama bin Laden out. And they aren't normally used as a quick reaction force because they like to plan. They're very assiduous. They were in a CH-47, which was an old one. They normally use MH-47s, which are more capable. And all these things I can criticize tactically, but I think the way they were fighting the war over there, it was an economy of force, and they were misusing, in my opinion, the SEAL Team 6 forces as quick reaction. That's a personal opinion. People can disagree. The fact is, and let's get to the bottom line, Vice President Biden released the names that it was SEAL Team 6. He released that in May of 2011, which put a target on SEAL Team 6. And that he compromised those forces.
Unbelievable.
That's why one of the many things why I think, just because he was spiking the football, why I don't think he will make a good commander-in-chief.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. We're live with Air Force General Tom McInerney, 32 years service in the U.S. Air Force, knows a little bit about missions and special ops. General McInerney, what did you think of the debate last night? How do you think Trump did? How do you think Biden did?
Well, I think Trump clearly won. But what everybody's got to understand, the bottom line is, John, if Biden wins, we are on the way to be a communist society. I spent, a minor correction, 35 years in the Air Force trying to fight communism at the height of the Cold War. And I see these generals and admirals supporting Biden, and they are one step away from communism. I think they are communists. Why? When you talk about the Green New Deal, it means 99.9% of the American people have got to buy a new car. Your gas car will no longer survive in that environment. You're going to have to rebuild your homes. So they want free tuition for college. They want socialized medicine. They want to pack the court. They want to cut the military. That is taking us into a communist society. We will be a communist society. It's not if, ands, or buts. This democratic socialism is the last step before you become communist. And once they do that and control the economy, they control the American people. So that is the danger of, when you ask me how did they do last night, clearly I believe Trump won because Biden lied about what he said about fracking, and what he's trying to do is get rid of our energy where we are now independent. And all these facts, that's the danger. And when I see military people, and I'll quote Admiral McRaven, who did an article in the Wall Street Journal on Monday talking about it and supporting the Green New Deal and all these other things. Are they crazy? Don't they understand? Black Lives Matter? Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization. It's in their charter. The three founders are dyed-in-the-wool Marxists. What is going on with the American people? And Biden, of course, I think everybody can see that he's just a proxy in there for the vice president, Kamala Harris, who is left of Bernie Sanders. So that's the danger we're facing. And I don't understand why people don't appreciate everything free appeals to people, John. But somebody pays for it. And then you become like Cuba, like Venezuela, then you are communist. You may call yourself a democratic socialist.
Why are so many of these generals then for Biden? Mattis, General Mattis, was Secretary of Defense. He's for Biden. I mean, you got a lot of these generals, your colleagues, your peers fought communism, and now they're for Biden. Why do they have a different perspective?
I don't think they've looked into what they're talking about. They're thinking about a Democratic Party that was 20 years ago. They don't understand where it's going. They haven't done their homework. If you get in a debate with them and tell them, what does the government taking over the entire U.S. economy when you take over energy and college tuitions, medicine, etc., packing the court, that is leading you in a direction. What do you say, General Mattis, Admiral McRaven? I don't understand where they're coming from. They haven't done their homework. If anybody disputes just what I said on the Green New Deal or free college tuition or socialized medicine or packing the court, please explain it to me. That means the government controls your life. They tell you when to put on your mask and when to take off your mask. Look, the Chinese communists, John, let me just say one thing.
Go ahead.
The Chinese communists did not unleash this COVID virus on us for nothing. They have a very focused intent what they did and what they did to the world.
Do you think it was deliberate, General?
Absolutely.
So you think do you think they manufactured it, they developed it in order to release it, or it was just there and it was an accident, and then they said go with it?
No, I believe they deliberately manufactured it. They have this cover story that it was an accident that came from bats and all this, but that's just a cover story. That's a cover story. It was done deliberately.
So, I mean, basically what you're saying is it was a biological weapon.
Absolutely. And President Trump saved 2 million Americans by locking down, and why he doesn't take credit for this, 2 million Americans for locking down China and them coming in. This was a biological attack against the United States. Let's not be naive. Now, this is speculation, but I think when we peel this onion back enough, we're going to find some democratic, wealthy people that were funding and moving, like the Gates Foundation, were involved with the study of these diseases at Wuhan. And I think that there were probably winks and blinks. And I don't know this, but everybody must say that it certainly helped the Democrats in this election, because there was no way, with the way the economy was moving along, was anybody going to beat Trump. Then all of a sudden this Wuhan virus, this COVID, comes and hits the United States like a ton of bricks and deliberately stops our economy, shuts it down. We've never seen anything like it in our history.
Yeah, and I mean, look, General, the other thing is at the time this happened, you got to remember the Chinese economy was tanking. And so we had the greatest economy in the history of the Republic, probably the history of the world, and the Chinese economy was tanking. They were paying these tariffs. They had to devalue their currency. They had these ghost cities with nobody there. Their GDP was shrinking. And so, yeah, I mean, on the surface, you could say, they manufactured this, they got it, and they released it to the West in order to wreak havoc on Western economies, in order to give them some time to catch up or something. I mean, that's a pretty plausible, I think, analysis, General.
It's a very plausible, John. It's a course of action that must be examined and examined in great detail.
Right.
The Obama administration funded the Wuhan lab with $3 million of U.S. money.
Mm-hmm.
So why were we not more aware of it? Why didn't they lock down Wuhan and that whole area? And all I can say is it was deliberate. It's a course of action that I think is the most logical. Look at what it has done to the whole world, let alone the U.S. economy. And guess what? States are not breaking out of it. The Democratic-led states. Why are the Democrats doing all these things? Look, Biden doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have anything. And the strong suit, in my opinion, was the way President Trump handled this, and they played this right back against him. And they haven't fought hard enough on it to say, look, I saved over 2 million lives in the United States.
Right.
And for the actions I took. And now we're leading the world out of it with respirators and all these things.
Right.
But this was, and the president wants to be very careful. I know how he says it, but I want the American people to understand that I believe, as a course of action, this was deliberately done by the Chinese and Chinese Communist Party. They had too many options to tell the world, beware, this coronavirus has gotten loose. We've got to lock everything down in the world. No more travel around. Yet, look at all the people, the Chinese, that were going into northern Italy and how it spread throughout Europe. They did not shut down the Chinese New Year, John.
Right. Which they should have done. I mean, if they had any concern about corralling this, those are all the moves they would have made. Hey, I'm out of time. I want to thank General Thomas McInerney for being with us. 35 years of service in the U.S. Air Force, knows a little bit about missions and special ops. And great segment, General. We have to have you on as a regular. Great insight, sir, especially on SEAL Team 6. General Thomas McInerney, thanks for being with us, sir. Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing, John.